Wait, let's unpack this. What do 18th century French exiles, complex quantum mathematics, and like the actual DNA inside your cells have in common?
Right. It sounds like a joke setup.
It really does. But today we're taking a deep dive into a really deeply personal manuscript. It's by Joshua Aaron Terziu, and it's titled Star-Crossed Lovers. And our mission today is to figure out how this author takes all of those completely wild elements, so ancestral heritage, advanced math, cellular biology, and synthesizes them into a literal, workable formula for surviving generational trauma.
Yeah.
Which is, we're talking about mapping out a way to raise resilient kids when the world around you and maybe even your own family history is just completely fractured.
Yeah. And I have to say, it is an incredibly ambitious text. When you first look at the sources we're pulling from today, it feels like we are jumping across, 5 different academic disciplines.
At least 5, yeah.
Right. But the author's core argument actually weaves them all together seamlessly. He essentially argues that to understand the severe psychological and physical pain that his family endured in the modern era, we can't look at trauma in isolation.
Right.
You can't just look at a medical diagnosis today and understand the root cause. You actually have to trace the origin of that trauma back centuries, specifically to the roots of Akkadian culture.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? Because if we're trying to understand, say, a broken bone, we look at the point of physical impact. But to understand this family's psychological fracture, the author is saying we have to look at a historical impact. So I guess, who are the Akkadians and what was their original baseline before this trauma even occurred?
Right. So the Akkadians were a fiercely independent people. They originated from regions in France, like Brittany, Normandy, and Picardy. And those specific areas possessed very deep Celtic and pagan influences. So because of that, geographical and cultural isolation, the Akkadians developed a worldview and a religion that was based entirely on what the author describes as inner conviction.
Inner conviction.
Exactly. Their spirituality and their social rules, they were not dictated by orthodox preaching or, some king in a distant castle.
Which, I have to say, the manuscript has this brilliant little historical detail that I just loved. The formal Catholic priests who were assigned to Acadia would write these highly frustrated letters back to their bishops in Quebec.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
Right. They complained that the moment the priest started his sermon, the Acadian men would they'd just stand up, step outside for a smoke, maybe go watch a horse race, and then casually stroll back into the church right as the Eucharist was being served.
Yeah, which perfectly captures their entire societal structure. They deeply valued the communal aspect of the church, gathering together, sharing the rituals.
Yeah.
But they categorically rejected the hierarchical authority of a priest telling them how to behave.
They just weren't having it.
Not at all. Their survival model was entirely horizontal. It was built on a philosophy they called tout le monde chez Dieu, which translates to everyone is family in the house of God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In that traditional Akkadian model, your survival depended on mutual aid. You survived the winter because your neighbor helped you build your roof and harvest your crops, not because a central government or, an employer provided a safety net.
Which, that makes the historical tragedy that follows just so much more devastating.
Yeah, it does.
The Grand Arrangement. In the 18th century, the British and Americans engaged in a state-sponsored ethnic cleansing of the Acadian people. They forcibly removed them from their homeland, burned their farms, split up families, and just scattered them across the Atlantic coast.
Right.
And many of them eventually wandered down into Louisiana, where they became the Cajuns.
Yeah, and the author takes that historical trauma and applies a really provocative lens to it. He argues that this grand arrangement, this great uprooting, never actually ended.
Right.
He uses the phrase une continuation de le grand arrangement. His premise is that modern state and social institutions are actively continuing that ethnic cleansing today, just, in a different form.
Okay, so I have to pause you there, actually, because I pushed back hard on that premise while I was reading the notes.
I figured you might.
Yeah, it's a fascinating historical lens, sure, but he is comparing modern institutions like schools, rigid corporate jobs, the biomedical system, to literal ethnic cleansing. How does getting a traditional 9-to-5 job or sending your kid to public school equate to the destruction of a culture? These are just the fundamental building blocks of functioning in modern society, right?
Well, they are the building blocks of a modern individualistic society. And the author's point is that those structures are fundamentally incompatible with the Akkadian model of survival. Think about the mechanics of it. In the Acadian way of life, survival relied on constant daily mutual aid. You share the physical labor, you share the food, you share the childcare with your extended family and your neighbors.
Right.
But when you introduce a system that forces a father to leave that community for a rigid 9-to-5 job to earn an individual isolated wage, or you force a mother into a rigid institutional schedule dictated by an employer, you completely sever the bonds of that extended communal family.
Because you just don't have the time or energy anymore.
Exactly. The state and the corporation replace the neighbor. And the crucial difference here is that institutions demand a transactional relationship.
Right. A boss only cares about your output.
Yeah, and a hospital only looks at your symptoms. You cannot, as the author points out, you can't hug your boss like they are your uncle.
I mean, you shouldn't try.
Right, exactly. So the biological human need for deep, horizontal communal connection is essentially starved by this vertical hierarchical authority.
So if modern institutions are actively dismantling that communal safety net, what happens to the individuals who fall through the cracks? Because the author doesn't just treat this as some historical thought experiment. He connects this loss of cultural structure directly to his own family, specifically to his mother, Madeline, who went by Mimi.
Yeah. Madeline's life is really the emotional epicenter of this manuscript.
Yeah.
She was profoundly shaped by the failures of both her immediate family and the institutional systems around her.
Yeah.
She endured unimaginable childhood neglect and severe abuse from an alcoholic father. Her mother was severely depressed and constantly hospitalized. And because she lacked that extended horizontal communal support system that, traditional Acadian culture would have provided, the extreme early trauma just compounded.
Just piled on.
Yeah. Madeline eventually developed multiple personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and struggled deeply with severe addiction.
And reading the letters she wrote to young Joshua, I mean, they are staggering.
Truly.
You have a woman who is battling severe, debilitating mental illness, bouncing in and out of clinical institutions that are largely failing to heal her, and yet she possesses this piercing lucidity when it comes to her son. She is desperately trying to pour emotional intelligence into him. There's this one line she writes to him, I think it was, "Sad, happy, angry, you are lovable just the way you are."
Yeah, that's the one.
She was denied an emotional vocabulary her entire life, and yet she is fighting through the fog of multiple personality disorder to teach her son that his feelings are valid.
It is a massive testament to her inherent resilience. But Madeline also makes a highly controversial, really agonizing decision. When Joshua was just 8 years old, Madeline recognized that her severe mental illnesses and her addictions made her an incredibly unstable parent.
Yeah.
She knew she could not provide the day-to-day consistency a child needs, so she permanently placed Joshua in the care of his aunt.
Which, I was thinking about this decision in the context of our modern expectations of healing. If a family is struggling today, the societal expectation is that the nuclear family is this isolated, impenetrable island.
Right.
The parents are supposed to just tough it out, maybe go to therapy for an hour a week, and fix the dysfunction completely in private.
Right, you hide it.
Exactly. And surrendering your child to a relative is often stigmatized as a failure or like abandonment. But looking at it through the Acadian structure we just discussed, Madeline's choice wasn't abandonment at all.
Not even slightly. In the Acadian model, the extended family isn't secondary. The extended family is the immediate family.
Right. So by placing Joshua with his aunt, Madeline was intentionally activating that horizontal support system to save her son when the vertical nuclear system failed. She was utilizing the community to break the cycle of inherited trauma. It was the ultimate act of protective, resilient parenting.
It really was. But that action still leaves Joshua experiencing profound family instability. I mean, he loses that daily connection with his mother. And that instability is compounded when, as a young adult, he survives a horrific tragedy of his own.
Yeah, this part of the manuscript is intense.
It is. Joshua and his best friend, Aaron, are walking when they are struck by a drunk driver in a hit and run. Aaron is killed instantly, and Joshua is left bleeding on the side of the road with a completely shattered pelvis.
And the way the author describes the aftermath in the hospital is deeply unsettling, but it perfectly illustrates this mindset he developed. He is brought into the emergency room, his pelvis is broken in multiple places, he's covered in lacerations, and he's just lost his best friend. But because the doctors have to check him for internal bleeding, they tell him they cannot administer any painkillers for hours.
Right.
And Joshua just decides to be with the pain. He doesn't thrash around. He doesn't fight the physical agony. Later, when a doctor has to put a suture in his eyelid without any anesthetic, Joshua actually laughs through the pain and jokingly calls it his Superman stitch.
Yeah, that conscious decision to radically accept the pain, rather than trying to numb it or escape it, that becomes the philosophical pivot point of his entire life.
Wow.
About a month after the accident, he admits to feeling immense, consuming anger. He has dark fantasies about tracking down the drunk driver and getting violent revenge.
Which is completely understandable.
Absolutely. But he catches himself. Instead of letting the hatred consume him, he uses it as a catalyst. He realizes that this profound hatred is actually pointing him toward a deeper, more profound, unconditional love.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you there.
For sure.
Because the manuscript explains this psychological breakthrough using Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorems.
Yes.
And I will admit, when I saw quantum mathematics being used to explain processing grief, I was completely lost. I mean,
Right.
How on earth does a theorem about mathematical logic help a guy lying in a hospital with a crushed pelvis process the death of his best friend?
It is a massive intellectual leap. I'll give you that.
Mhm.
But the mechanism makes incredible sense when you break it down.
Okay, walk me through it.
So Kurt Gödel was a logician who completely shook the foundations of mathematics in the 1930s. To boil down his incompleteness theorems, Gödel proved that any complex formal logical system will always contain truths that cannot be proven by the rules of that system itself.
Wait, say that one more time.
Basically, a system cannot prove its own consistency from within. To understand the complete truth of the system, you have to step outside of it.
Ah, okay.
Right, so Joshua takes that mathematical absolute and applies it to human emotion. If you are trapped in a system of trauma, anger, grief, a shattered pelvis, you cannot resolve that trauma using the rules of the trauma itself. Anger will not cure anger. Vengeance will not cure grief.
Right.
But Gödel's work implies that if you fully map, understand, and radically accept the constraints of a given system, you can see how to transcend it.
Okay, let me try to put this into an analogy to see if I am actually grasping the mechanism here.
Go for it.
Imagine you are trapped in a massive, complex maze. The rules of the maze are simple. Walk on the paths, find the exit. But what if, by design, the maze actually has no exit?
Right.
If you just keep running down the paths, getting angrier and angrier, bashing your head against the brick walls, you are trapped inside the logic of the system. You are trying to prove the maze has a solution using the maze's own broken rules.
Exactly.
But if you walk the maze slowly, if you touch every single brick wall, if you map out every dead end and radically accept the structural truth that you are trapped in a box, you suddenly understand the system well enough to realize the solution isn't inside the maze. The solution is above it. You use your deep knowledge of the walls to build a ladder and you climb right over them.
That is exactly the mechanism. The maze is the trauma. Joshua applied mathematical logic to his emotional state. By lying in that hospital bed and radically accepting the horrific constraints of his reality, feeling every ounce of the physical pain and the grief of losing Aaron without trying to escape it or numb it, he transcended the system.
He didn't deny his anger. He mapped every dead end of it.
Yes. And by accepting the reality of the maze, he built a ladder out of unconditional love and climbed out.
And he pairs this Western mathematical logic with an Eastern philosophical practice to actually achieve that mapping. He introduces a concept called jocho, paired with a Greek concept called tama themata.
Yeah, so jocho is a Japanese concept that describes the profound act of looking inward. It is the practice of encountering your own rich, unique inner universe through immense patience and mindfulness.
Okay.
And he combines this with tama themata, which translates roughly to taking what you already know and possess and using it to create universal gain. For the author, doing advanced mathematics is not just, crunching numbers on a chalkboard to pass a test. It is a deeply mindful internal process. You sit patiently with the problem or the trauma without seeking external distraction. You look inward, and the insight to solve the problem arises from within your own mapped universe.
What does that look like in everyday life, though? Because for the listener who isn't trying to solve quantum equations, how does jocho help them process daily stress?
Let's say you are a parent, and your toddler is having an absolute screaming meltdown in the middle of the grocery store.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. The immediate systemic reaction, the rules of the maze, so to speak, is to get stressed, feel embarrassed, and yell back at the child to force compliance. That is hierarchical authority trying to control the situation.
Yeah, trying to just shut it down from the top down.
Exactly. But a parent practicing jocho does something different. Instead of reacting to the external chaos, they pause and turn inward. They sit with their own rising frustration for a microsecond, accept it, and then respond to the child from a place of deep, universal patience.
Wow.
That is Tamathimata. They use their own internal emotional regulation to create a universal gain for the child, teaching the child how to calm down through modeling rather than screaming.
It's basically internal alchemy. He is taking the darkest, most chaotic parts of human existence and using mindful mathematical acceptance to turn them into empathy.
Yes.
But the author doesn't just leave this as an internal philosophical exercise. And this is where the manuscript completely blew my mind. He asks, how does this internal reflection translate to raising healthy children in the physical world? And his answer is that it literally changes our physical biology.
Right. Connecting back to Charles Darwin, the author points out that humanity's true evolutionary advantage was never our physical strength or our speed. We survived because of our ability to connect, to empathize, and to cooperate.
Right.
He coins the term biological empathy. He argues that when human beings share a genuine moment of care, what he calls a micro moment of biological positivity, it isn't just a fleeting psychological feeling. It is a biological imperative that physically alters the human body.
See, I understand that a hug feels good, or that having dinner with a friend makes me happy. But the author claims that these moments optimize vagal tone, promote neurogenesis, and change epigenetic expression. I know what DNA is, but how exactly does a conversation or a shared meal chemically alter my genetic expression or grow brain cells? Walk me through the mechanism of that.
So it comes down to how our nervous system processes safety versus threat. When you are isolated or you are interacting with a strict hierarchical authority like a demanding boss, your body often registers that as a low-level threat.
Okay.
It pumps out cortisol, the stress hormone. High cortisol levels over long periods inhibit brain growth and keep your nervous system in a constant state of fight or flight.
Right, you're just constantly running on fumes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you experience a micro moment of biological positivity, so a genuine laugh with a friend, a shared meal, a moment of deep empathy, your brain releases oxytocin and dopamine. These chemicals actively lower your cortisol levels. And when your stress drops, your vagus nerve, which controls your parasympathetic nervous system, is optimized. Your body basically realizes it is safe.
So the body switches out of survival mode and into repair mode.
That's exactly it. And in that repair mode, your brain is actually capable of neurogenesis, literally growing new neurons and forming new pathways. But it goes even deeper into epigenetics. You have your DNA, which is a fixed blueprint, but on top of your DNA is the epigenome, which consists of chemical tags like methyl groups that tell your genes whether to turn on or turn off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Environmental factors, especially chronic stress or deep communal connection, directly alter those chemical tags. So a shared moment of empathy can physically turn off a gene expression related to inflammation and turn on a gene expression related to cellular repair. Human connection is quite literally biological medicine.
Which brings us all the way back to the historical Akkadian practices.
Right.
The author mentions the boucherie, where an entire community comes together to butcher an animal, process the meat, and share it so no one starves. And the Fez Dudu, which were these massive, multi-generational communal dance parties. From the outside, those just look like fun cultural social events.
But from a biological standpoint, the author argues they were highly evolved mechanisms for communal survival and physical healing. The Akkadians didn't have modern medicine, but they had systematic, culturally embedded generators of these micro moments of biological positivity. They were bathing their nervous systems in oxytocin through shared joy and mutual aid.
So when the institutions, the grand arrangement or modern corporate systems broke up those communal gatherings and forced everyone into isolated hierarchical labor, they weren't just attacking a culture's schedule. They were actively cutting off the biological medicine that kept generational trauma at bay. They were keeping everyone's cortisol levels artificially high, preventing that neurogenesis and positive epigenetic expression.
Exactly. And knowing all of this, the author offers a very specific practical strategy for parents today, especially parents who have survived family instability or trauma and are trying to figure out how to raise resilient children in a fractured modern society. He argues that we have to foster what he calls altruistic self-mastery in our kids.
Altruistic self-mastery, meaning we need to completely shift the motivation for why kids do things. We shouldn't be teaching children to pursue autonomy or master a skill just so they can get an A on a test, or please a boss, or earn a massive individual paycheck to buy things they don't need.
Right. You encourage them to master a skill or pursue their passions for the inherent joy of the work itself and for the tangible benefit it can bring to their community. You teach a child that their core value is not derived from a hierarchical authority praising them or grading them. Their value comes from their inherent connection to the human family.
Yeah.
When children learn to operate from a place of communal joy and mutual aid rather than isolated competition, their nervous systems are fundamentally calmer. They are physically healthier, and they are infinitely more resilient to the inevitable stresses of life.
I keep thinking about Madeline's letters. Even in her darkest, most chaotic moments battling addiction and multiple personalities, she was practicing altruistic self-mastery. She was pouring unconditional validation into Joshua. She ignored what the formal institutional biomedical system said a good mother should look like, and instead relied on the horizontal community, her sister, to ensure her son thrived. She broke the cycle by rejecting the vertical authority and leaning into the horizontal connection.
And Joshua's entire journey is the proof of that strategy's success. He took the immense compounding pain of his family's history and the visceral trauma of his physical accident. He mapped those traumas with the deep internal mindfulness of Joko and the structural logic of Gödel's theorems.
Yeah.
And by radically accepting his reality, he transcended the maze. He transformed historical and physical pain into biological empathy, which he is now passing on to his own children. It is a breathtaking synthesis of how human beings are biologically and mathematically wired to heal.
So what does this all mean? We've traveled from 17th century Akkadian history to the mathematical rules of the universe, to the tragic story of a mother's sacrifice, right down to the methyl groups turning genes on and off inside our cells. For the learner listening to this deep dive right now, the takeaway is incredibly empowering.
It really is.
You do not need a degree in quantum physics or molecular biology to change your genetic expression. You do not need a perfect, trauma-free past to raise resilient kids. Every single time you choose to put down your phone and have genuine FaceTime with a loved one. Every time you approach a highly stressful situation with radical acceptance mapping the walls of the maze instead of violently fighting them, you are literally rewiring your biology. You are generating biological empathy, lowering your cortisol, and you are actively breaking the cycles of stress and inherited trauma for the next generation.
And that leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over. If our DNA, our very biology, is quite literally wired to heal through shared empathy and horizontal community, and our modern society is increasingly built on digital isolation, rigidly structured schedules, and constant hierarchical stress from employers and algorithms, are we willingly participating in our own modern derangement? Are we allowing ourselves to be culturally exiled from the very human connections that keep us biologically healthy? And more importantly, knowing what you know now about how a single moment of connection alters the body, whose day can you change right now just by sharing a genuine moment of biological empathy?
It really makes you rethink how we view healing, doesn't it? We are so conditioned to look for the clean break, the easy binary diagnosis to explain our pain. We want a pill or a quick institutional fix. But the real medicine isn't found on a glowing screen or in an isolated clinic. It's murky, it's messy, it requires looking deeply inward, and it's found entirely in how deeply we are willing to connect with each other in the dark.